Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to be here. This is my second time speaking here at the Black Forest Star Party, and I just want to say I appreciate being back. As you said, this is the talk that I'm going to be giving today, and I really think that we're on the cusp of something kind of new, something that I've started to see over the years, just a change in the way that people observe. And there are people who still very much want to be doing the visual astronomy, and there are people who really are into the imaging. And I think we're starting to see that gap closing. So I just want to kind of start us off by taking a moment, and it's kind of weird, but just close your eyes for a second. Work with me here. I want you to just imagine, for just a moment, go back to your most memorable time under the stars. Think about who you were with, where you were at. What does it mean to you? Why was it special? All right, open your eyes. So everybody hopefully has a mental picture of this in their minds. And I'd like you to just share it with somebody around you. What did you think of? I'll give you a second. This is the part where you have to talk to someone. So I'm going to share my experience. One of my first times, this is actually not an image of that night, but this is an actual image from here at Cherry Springs. My first night up here, I was with my brother. I was early in my teaching career. I think it was like 2008 or 2009. And I'd never been here before. My brother and I came up. We made some mistakes along the way. We ended up on a fire road for a while. It was crazy. But we got up here. We got our tent set up. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up out of the bed, to go outside. And I looked down, and I saw my shadow. And I'm looking around trying to figure out where is the light coming from until I realized it was the Milky Way. And I know that's a rare night around here, but it was pretty neat. And it definitely struck me as something that was just a core memory. And I looked through my Dobsonian telescope, and I panned through the sky for a little while. I was fortunate enough to have a neighbor who let me kind of tag along. And even though I ran a planetarium at the time, I still couldn't find my way. There was too much. And he started to point out some of the things in the night sky. So that was my experience. Next thing I'd like you to find out, would you consider yourself more of a visual astronomer or more of an astrophotographer? If you had to pick one. All right, did anybody here choose astrophotographer, but your most memorable memory was visual? A few. Okay? So there's something there, right? There's something there about visual astronomy that it still brings us back to those memories. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. I've done both, about equal time, actually. So up until about 2000 and I'd say 14 or 15, I was doing mostly visual. And as I said, I was running a planetarium, and I had been doing some observing. This is from the transit of Venus, and I had a bunch of people out there, and we were trying as a club, as a high school teacher, to get people interested. And so this is way back when I had a little nicer face and a little bit more hair. And coming up here, once again, looking through telescopes that are not my scope. I had the opportunity a few years back to look through a 36-inch Dobsonian with Al Nagler, and we had the Eyepiece in there that was the night vision. And I started to realize that, sharing our experiences with others is important. And I really realized that this is really what astronomy looks like oftentimes. Light pollution, right? We're dealing with this. I drove 4 hours to get here to get away from it. And we're seeing this new group of very interested people, our young people, who they don't get the chance to see it even as good as we did as kids. And I'm trying, as a high school teacher, to get them excited. And so I, for many years would bring them out to do star parties, and I ran a local astronomy club as the club president in Lancaster. And then I found the rise of digital astrophotography, and this is my first ever image from a Canon T3i from my house. You can see Orion up here, and I was hooked. The untracked single image, right? No stacking or anything like that. But it got away from me pretty quick. So I had, fortunately, a friend of mine who is a very good astrophotographer, kind of introduced me to it. He told me to stay away, and I didn't listen. And then he kind of told me about this coming wave of CMOS cameras and how they were going to change everything. And so you know the story, but lower cost, higher sensitivity. It really democratized the whole process of doing deep sky astrophotography to the point where we are now. And I got my first taste of that. This is actually at my parents' house, where some of the earliest memories that I have of astronomy were formed. So what's the trade-off? What do we gain and what do we lose? We gain some detail. We gain color, which is pretty cool, right? We lost some of that immediacy, the presence of being out under the night sky. Isn't totally lost, but it certainly can be. And imaging, I think, and I should be careful what I do here with this, but it's not necessarily the same thing as, I should really put visual observing, right? They're different, or they're definitely different. And of course, the mini computers came along, Raspberry Pis, the ASI Air, of course, Stellarmate, pocket observatories with the phones in our pocket, just everything being remote and wireless, and it's getting to be more and more like that every day. We have apps like Sky Safari, Stellarium. These are great planning tools. If you're not using them already, I highly recommend that you look into them. And these are, of course, things that we use as tools now instead of our old paper charts. And they've really changed, once again, the way that we interact with this hobby. So where are we at? We're at the point now where imaging is thriving. We've got more people doing astrophotography than I can count here. And we've got those new smart telescopes coming along the way. How many of you, by the way, have a smart telescope at this point? Okay, so it's going to be, I'm expecting within the next few years that that's going to be 50%, right? They're getting cheaper, they're getting better. And it does feel in some ways, though, that the community is splitting a little bit. And it's been for a while, where we have people who are very much interested in continuing to do the visual observation, and people are going very much gung-ho with the astrophotography. And I think, as the name of the talk suggests, that we do have a bridge between them coming. And so this is my introduction to you for visual astrophotography. So some sort of a hybrid between the two, where we have the clarity and the immediacy of being under the night sky, looking through an eyepiece. But a new observing experience where, once again, this is from my backyard, where we can get images that are meaningful to us. So I asked ChatGPT, of course. I said, is this an idea that somebody else has already had? And supposedly, no. This is something that does not appear to be coined and used in any other way. So no evidence. I'm making things up, is what I'm saying. So what is the definition? And this is the only time I'm going to read off the slide. A style of astronomy that blends the immediacy of visual observing with the enhanced clarity of astrophotography, allowing real-time, live views of celestial objects that remain faithful in experience of standing under the night sky. Unlike traditional astrophotography, which focus on long exposures and post-processing, visual astrophotography emphasizes the observing experience itself, capturing and sharing the cosmos as it appears in the moment. So that moment that you're underneath the night sky, I experienced it last night with my neighbor John. Where's John at? Maybe not here yet. So my neighbor over here, he was out with me. He was doing his traditional astrophotography, and I invited him over to look through the Smart Eye, which I actually have along here. And this little device is everything, all in one. And so this is a very rare opportunity to see one of these in real form because there are about 500 of them in the world. And I'm fortunate enough to work with the folks that developed it, and I played a role in its development early on. So this device has a little Raspberry Pi inside, and it does the full astrophotography experience with this eyepiece as the novel feature. I'm going to sit that right there. So this is the Pegasus Astro Smart Eye, and this is the bridge, I think. It's the beginning of the bridge. And when we spoke, well, I'll get to that in a second. Think intelligent electronic eyepiece, right? It's that real-time observing of looking into the OLED display. So you do get true blacks from that. And you know, when you're looking through it, it is a screen, but I can tell you it does not damage your night vision. You can turn it all the way down to a very, very low level of brightness that still, it looks great through the eyepiece, but you know, you can look up and you can still see the night sky without letting go of all of the things you're trying to do otherwise. Let me keep going here. So I would be remiss to not mention that this is a two-company partnership. So I've been working with the folks at Simulation Curriculum for many years. The planetarium that I ran off of Starry Night, and Starry Night and Sky Safari are the same company, Simulation Curriculum, and Pegasus Astro. So real quick little background. About 3 years ago, I went to Mike Goodman, who is the owner of Simulation Curriculum, and I said, we are at a very important point here, and I think that Sky Safari in particular is very well set up to be a platform that could operate a camera, because it already operates telescope mounts. And if we can get camera integration into Sky Safari, we would be able to do a lot of really cool stuff. And he said, I'm listening. And at NEAF about 3 years ago, I think it was the first time, maybe it may have even been the one right after COVID, I introduced them to the folks at Pegasus, because Pegasus has everything, is an ecosystem, but they didn't have a brain, right? They didn't have anything that operated. You needed to have some sort of a mini computer still to operate their system. And so they had a need, and Simulation Curriculum was not a hardware company. And so I introduced these two companies, and they took it to the next level here to make the device.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, I just wanted to take it.
Okay, I can make these publicly available, and I will have a number of these throughout as well.
How much does that cost you?
There's introductory prices that were out. I can't tell you exactly where it's going to be, north of 2,000 probably. But it's everything, including a camera. So, all right. So what's in the box? The Smart Eye is this device. This is just the cap here and the nose piece. And then within there's a USB-C cable that connects to a power adapter. And it's got a 2-inch nose piece that you put in just like an eyepiece. So as long as your telescope is able to accept a 2-inch eyepiece, you can take it straight out of the box and use it. If you don't have a 2-inch eyepiece and you have the 1.25-inch eyepiece, they do make a separate 1.25 that you can buy. But because of the weight of it, they're suggesting that you probably are best off using the 2-inch eyepiece because of the weight capacity of your adapting would be a little bit hard. So within here, they have this thing over here they're calling the Astro Crown. So it's kind of like the crown on a watch, right? Where you spin it, and just like the iWatch here, you can click it and you can spin it, and it does different things. So all of the interface is right there within the eyepiece itself. And they've got live view that you can use to pan through the night sky and look for things. And to observe, all you do is scroll to new observation and hit click once, and it takes over from there. It's literally one step. Yes? It does not necessarily require a go-to mount, but it does work best when tracking. You would need some sort of a way to track. It does not have to be a German equatorial mount. It can be an altitude alt-az mount, but you'll get some field rotation then in your images. But it does compensate for the field rotation, though. It also has a M58 thread, so if you would prefer to hook it up with, the reducer or something, where you would want to hook it up more like a traditional camera, you can, but it's not primarily used for that. The Sony IMX533 is a color CMOS sensor. That's what currently is in the device. This is the first generation, and there will likely be more, and there is discussion on more options as this matures. And this one is a square sensor, which is nice to be able to look through the eyepiece because you're not cutting off a lot of that extra real estate of the sensor. So what you get what you pay for, and it's relatively inexpensive and still has the very good capabilities of this generation of CMOS sensor. It is cooled, so it has a two-stage thermoelectric cooling, and it can go about 30 degrees or so C below ambient temperatures. So it does give you an option to change that in the settings. So if you're on a very hot night or something and you want to bring that temperature up so that you're consistent with your temperatures for calibration purposes, you can do that. You can create darks, both for the live stacking as well as for your observations, and you would have to change that setting if you chose 10-second exposures for your live exposure. You would need to make a new set of darks to go to 15 seconds, right? Or if you change the temperature of the sensor, you would want to make new darks once again. So that process, it's once again just in the menu. It's a single click. You have the cap over the end of it, and within a few seconds, you've got a calibrated dark frame that will be referenced whenever it's doing a stacking of the images. You can also use filters. So as of right now, you're screwing a 2-inch filter on the end before you put it into your telescope. And any filter that you would use on a traditional astrophotography setup works here. The plan in the very near future is they will have a manual filter wheel that you can also purchase as an accessory that you can flip through different filters for different objects, and that's coming soon. That I know is currently being worked on by Pegasus. Yeah, go ahead.
Does it have an output other than the eyepiece?
I will get to that, yes. So the thing I really like about this, especially for folks that are doing visual astronomy primarily, you can remove the smart eye and put your eyepiece back in a matter of seconds or vice versa. Because it's not connected in that traditional astrophotography way, that process is just very quick. Or if you want to change from one telescope to another, it's also, loosen it up, put it in another one, and go again. Yes?
So when you take it out, put your eyepiece in, do you lose your image?
Do you lose the image when you remove it from there? It will pause, and if you want to go back and resume, you can. It will, as long as you are tracking well enough that it can do that. You can stop and pause an observation, look at with a traditional eyepiece, and then back in again. Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
Designed for a certain focal length?
Oh, good question. Designed for a certain focal length of scope. The one thing is it should be something less than f7 is recommended. So a Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope at like an f10, it would work, but it wouldn't work as well as something that was a little bit faster, f7 or below. But you can use it with all different focal lengths. The chip size is a consideration. because of this, it's a smaller chip size, you probably should go with a shorter focal length scope. I'm using the NP101 from Teleview on it, and it's great. I also have 130 stellar view that also works great. So you get a good range. So the display itself is designed to give you a very crisp, clear view. As I said, it's an OLED screen. I can tell you, and you can see tonight if you would like to come out. I'll invite you out to my site and look through it, but you don't see pixels, which is, of course, the big concern, right, that you're going to see a pixel or something. It's very clear, clearer than you would see on your iPhone screen or your Android screen. It's a 90-degree field of view. So when you look in, you kind of have to look around a little bit. It's a little bit different than observing through a traditional eyepiece. So folks who are very attuned to looking through an eyepiece in the traditional way, it takes some getting used to. But as soon as you can kind of get the idea, instead of just moving your eye around, you do have to move your head a little bit, and it sharpens up really quick then. And it's a 12 millimeter eye relief. So you can use your glasses, but I personally don't. And so for me, I do have an astigmatism. And so one of the asks that I have, because I don't work for them, I'm just a person who helped them out, is I would really like to have some way of adapting something for an astigmatism here, a diopter that makes my view look perfect, because I'd like to take my glasses off. The diopter that is on there is adjusted by this little ring. And so you move the ring back and forth, and in fact, the first thing when you turn it on is it asks you to look in, and it gives you a little screen and asks you to make it as sharp as you can for your eyes. But while you're observing, you can make changes to that. It's not permanent, and if more than one person is observing, you would still want to make them, adjust that the same way. Someone had asked me about parfocal I had heard earlier on. When you remove the eyepiece and go to a traditional eyepiece, you will have to change your focus by the very nature of just where the sensor would be compared to your optics. Now, the question we had earlier about, is it the only way to view? And the answer is no. It does have a Wi-Fi antenna here, and it does put out its own Wi-Fi hotspot that you can connect to. And so, of course, my dad's calling me. It puts out both a 2.4 gigahertz and a 5 gigahertz band. But the recommendation from Pegasus is to use the 2.4 gigahertz if you want to connect it to other astronomy equipment, because many of the mount equipment only runs off of the 2.4 gigahertz. And as I'll show you in a few seconds, you can integrate all of them together, and you get the most out of the device. It also has Bluetooth 5, so it has a ways of transferring images and things like that as well.
Did you mean that 20 people can have their phones and watch what's going on at the same time as the person who's looking in it?
Yes, more than one person can be connected at once, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So while you're doing all this, and while you're hopefully not thinking about doing astrophotography, to be honest, because that's the point of this. It's supposed to be seamless. You're supposed to let it just kind of fade off into the background what you're doing. It is doing the process of stacking, but it's also keeping every one of those subs on an SD card. And you can pull those off later, and you can bring them onto your computer, and you can do the traditional astrophotography methods and put it through PixInsight, and you get all those benefits, and it's great. It still does that, but you don't have to. I told you about a power adapter earlier on. This is important. You do need to use this power adapter, and they're very keen to tell you, make sure you're using the Pegasus stuff to do this, because not every power adapter is equivalent, and yes, you don't want to fry it. It's $2,000. So once you get your photos onto your computer, it gives you the dark library, it gives you the images, it gives you, they are FITS files. So you're getting, true astrophotography files, and it gives you little snapshots as well. Some of the details here, it's an all aluminum design, and it's pretty heavy. 795 grams is pretty heavy. So when considering, if this is for you, you need to make sure that your telescope's going to be able to handle that kind of weight in terms of the actual connection. And, that's important because you want it, once again, not to fall off your telescope. It's got a 2-year warranty and compatible with both Android and iOS devices. Sky Safari is one of the main ways that you can interact with it. So the question earlier about can it go to another screen, the answer is yes. Sky Safari integrates directly with it, and you can bring it up on your phone, and you can control everything. You can see everything from your phone. You can be sitting inside your house if you would like, and it's 10 degrees outside, and you want to still do some imaging, you can do that like you can on some of the other devices out there. And when I said earlier about 2.4 gigahertz is the recommendation, and that's because you can integrate your telescope mount, you can integrate the Sky Safari app, and with that you can do plate solves, you can do go-tos, you can get in-phone camera control, and guiding is coming in the future. It's not quite ready for that yet, but it has a guide port, an ST4 guide port, so you can guide once the software is updated for that purpose. And then within Sky Safari, there is a new feature. So if you have Sky Safari on your phone, there is a camera option now. And at this point, at least, Smart Eye is the only compatible device. I don't know if that will continue to be the only compatible device, but currently that's the setup. So here's what it looks like on your phone. On the left here is the dashboard. So you can control information for the Smart Eye display, the Wi-Fi. You can connect it via ASCOM. It does have ASCOM drivers using Alpaca, so it's wireless. So you'll be able to control it from any software that you would traditionally use. The SD card. Local has to do with just like what your Wi-Fi is set up for, and then other system settings. And then on the right, this one here is for a guest view. So the question of earlier, do we have the ability to connect with many people? At this point, they have had a star party. I believe it was the Grand Canyon star party, and they had like 30 or 40 people connected to it at once. So it is capable of doing that. And the purpose of that is to one person at the eyepiece, but you can share it to many, many devices. Yes?
Do the guests have to have the Sky Safari app?
No. Nope. The guests do not need to have the Sky Safari app. All they need to do is connect to Smart Eye's Wi-Fi, and then they pull it up on their browser using smarteye.locals/guest. And we can demonstrate that tonight. Other questions? Yes?
Where are you going to demonstrate?
I'll show you on a map at the end here. So it's not just EAA, it's not just electronically assisted astronomy, because the purpose of it is to be more experience first. We care more about what you're seeing in the eyepiece and kind of letting everything else fade into the background than anything else. It's supposed to be more like the live observing that you'd experience. And so when you first look in the eyepiece, then you'll get this kind of an image where it doesn't look like much. And then the next image will come in and it'll look like this. And you can actually start to see that image building in the actual real time. And then by about a minute or two in, depending on the object, maybe 3 minutes in, you'll start to see some color. And then finally, after 5 or more minutes or so, you'll start to see some structured dark nebula popping out and things like that. It's really neat to watch that process unfold right before you. Now, the person who is in the background doing all of the actual code for this, his name is Richard Wright. He writes for Sky and Telescope. He's working for Sky Safari. He tells me that the process that you're going through here of doing the live stack, it will output a single file, and it will be able to be used as a FITS file. Those can actually be used as individual subs that you could then go into do post-processing on. And the benefits of this, especially as we have more and more satellites buzzing over and other things that are messing up our subs, and you're like, oh, got to throw that one out. Or you just choose to leave it and let the algorithms figure it out in your image. that's gone because it's now only taking 10 or 15-second subs, and you throw out a 10-second period of time, and you keep the other 5 minutes you were observing, right? And so there's a benefit to this, and he believes that, and I believe he's even written some of these articles for Sky and Telescope, he believes that live stacking is going to be the normal thing we're going to be seeing moving forward because of those types of things. And I would beg to say, for those of you who do anybody do planetary imaging, so more like the lucky imaging where you're waiting for this perfect point in the atmosphere to clear up, it's kind of got that capability as well, right? Because we're only taking a 10-second sub, so if there's a few moments of clear and then a cloud passes through, it just chucks those files, right? And that's a big difference compared to what you would see in a normal traditional astrophotography setup. So I have got a quick little video here, and it's just going to go through the process of what it looks like to observe over a few minutes within just a few seconds here. I guess it's not connected.
Does the sound come with it?
The sound does not come with it. I'll keep the sound off. So like it says here, the first image you see is dim, visually like you'd see in a large telescope. It's still playing? Okay. And then over some time, you start to see some of the image get better and brighter and brighter and cleaner. And then eventually starts to come out with some color. So we've got some pink and some blue, yeah, right there. So
how close is the first image to your visual experience? Because if I just put my 12-inch on the tripod, I'll see the tripod when I look.
right,
At the start.
how close is the image, he said, to the image you would see through your scope? Well, that depends. The first image. I would say that my NP101 would have a live view that would be similar to maybe a 12 or 15-inch Dob. That's probably a good ballpark. Once it's been stacking for a few minutes, then it's just completely different. Let's see if I can advance through this without making it play again. Let's do this the old-fashioned way. There we go. Okay. So backyard sessions, they're made richer because in my Bortle 6 skies, I get virtually nothing at this point. And it's sad to me. I try to bring the neighborhood kids out to look at some things, and we get little smudges. And that's about it. This, I feel like I can get people excited. I'm actually planning bringing this to my high school students in the coming weeks and running a little star party for them. We're talking about galaxies in class right now, and they can actually see them. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal compared to what I was working with before. Less friction, more observing. I personally, have gotten very frustrated over the years with astrophotography. It's amazing when it works, and it's frustrating when it doesn't. And this kind of takes a lot of that out of the equation. For outreach and education, once again, as a teacher, I personally feel like there's an immense amount of options here that we could make available to students. And that's kind of my personal interest in working with these folks is I want to get this into the classroom. And I can see endless amounts of opportunity. For example, you could set up an observing session, and you could keep track of which students got to observe which objects. And maybe you want them to experience the different types of stars through stellar evolution, right? And we could look at a supernova. We could look at a stellar nursery, right? We can look at a planetary nebula and just try to get an understanding of what these objects actually are and where you can find them in the night sky. And it really brings the telescope into the classroom in ways that were never possible. For people that are at the end of the eyepiece line, right, you've got a line of people, you do have that option of showing it on their screen so they can kind of understand what they're going to be coming up to look at. Because even though you have it on your screen, looking through the eyepiece is still the best option, the best view you have. And group working together, as a group, it's nice to have that option, and you're getting better engagement. Now, also in my personal interest is the citizen science aspects, and this is to come, not currently available, but variable stars, occultations, transits, it's all of these things that we could have Sky Safari remind us about having, an observation like an occultation or something, or a transit. It can lower the barrier for obtaining that information and hopefully help amateurs contribute to the science. If you're willing to upload your images to the cloud, there's also been some discussion on sharing data. And since they're all the exact same sensor, at this point at least, you've got that benefit. And you can put in what telescope focal lengths you're using, and it can stack many more images as a result under different conditions and different skies. The ASCOM alpaca mode, so we've got Nina here, and all of the normal things you would be accustomed to on Nina are all available for you right there. Provides that long exposure image option. Because let's be clear, these live stacks are not going to compare to what you're doing with a traditional astrophotography rig. That's not its point. It's not its goal, but it's capable of all of that on top of it. Also, future developments. This is my push, and I've been promised that this is going to happen someday. They're right now worried about more making sure everything is actually working with the Wi-Fi, making sure everything is clear in the menu systems and everything like that. But once they get past this initial push, they're going to start adding features. And one of them I'm asking for is the labeling of things like the craters of the moon. And I want it to be very, very in the background. Unless you want it there, it shouldn't be there. I'm asking for them to have a second button that you click just for the purpose of annotation. So you click on it, okay, that's what I'm looking at, unclick, and it's gone. Click it back again, it's there, click it off, it's gone. And that way it's not obstructive, because I can see, especially for the traditional people with normal visual observation, that could be seen as an extra that they don't want. And that's important to me, is that we maintain that experience. Same thing with galaxies and nebulas and clusters and IDing stars, all of the things that you can do already on Sky Safari, which by the way, you can still be doing on Sky Safari through Smart Eye and have it all connected, but I'd like to see it in the eyepiece also. Maybe measuring the star's brightness with just a click. That's an option. And I have a short video. I stole it off their website. Actually, they just posted it on their social media today. So placing your own images in the sky, they are already doing this at Sky Safari for astrobin images of the day. So, didn't work. There we go. So, what we're seeing here is a view from Sky Safari, and then they're zooming in, and the image that was taken is right there on the screen. That actually looks like it was from Smart Eye because it was a square. So they are working on that in the background. So all of your images now that you personally took can be on your own sky within the app, which is super cool. So as you're going through and maybe you want to do the Messier Marathon, right? And you want to get all of the images, and by the end of that run, you'll have every single one of them on your device. And you can take it home with you, right? Or you can share it with others. The other possibility for the future, and once again, this is possible already on Sky Safari, so I have demonstrated it in my video, and I won't play the whole thing. And I'm thinking about it, I might not have audio here. Nope, I'm not going to have audio.
More about it with the audio.
Okay, so I'll get you a link to my video later on, but what I'm basically doing in this point in the video I made a few weeks back is allowing Sky Safari to talk you through what you're viewing. And so as I'm looking through the eyepiece here,
Or to kind of give us it.
I'm going to just put my eye up to the eyepiece, but in the background I'm hearing all about this object from my phone. There's a discussion about possibly putting that in, and this is the real image that I was looking at the time. So is that dumbbell? Yes, dumbbell nebula. And so this is about 11 minutes and 30 seconds. No filters, by the way, and that will be the same tonight. I don't own any 2-inch filters. I have one coming, and it's in Chicago. So it didn't come fast enough, unfortunately. So if you look through the telescope tonight, you're not going to see anything with filters. It's just raw. And rekindling the magic. It's more about the wonder rather than the gadget, right? More about the returning to that presence under the night sky. I had asked a lot of you to think about that experience that you had, that you kind of remembered at the beginning of the talk. I want this to be that experience for you. I want you to feel like you have that connection under the night sky and get the best of both worlds, no matter where you're observing from. So if you would like to see this with your own eyes, we're here right at this pavilion, and I'm literally right there. If you can look, there's my camper. The scopes are right back there, so I'm just within range here. So I will likely have it on the Stellar View scope tonight, which is the 130, and that one was what I had it hooked up to last night. I got a number of really good views. So if you have any objects you'd like to look at, let me know. Yes?
When are they going to ramp up production on this? You said there's only 500.
Ramping up production is already happening. They're doing, I think it's a 1,200 or 1,500 run that's already sold out for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, on the views say they're available for pre-order.
The issue is the sensors are that in need, because this is also used by other companies as well. And so the 533 is a high demand sensor, and that's the problem. That's the bottleneck.
Does this work on planets too?
It does not currently have any planetary mode, but you could look at the planets in live view, but you're not going to be able to do like a stack of planetary yet. But you can, once again, the moon would be a live view, not a stacked view.
Is it equivalent to a low-power eyepiece that you would use in a job?
The sensor size is pretty small, so yes, it would be more like the low side of the eyepiece, like millimeters, right?
In terms of magnification.
It would be a higher magnification, yes. I can't give you the exact number without looking at a scope.
Can you zoom in on the image?
You can zoom in on the image on your device, but you can't not zoom in within the eyepiece itself. All right. So if you're interested in watching my video, it's like 40-some minutes, 30 or 40 minutes long, where I go through everything, and there's chapters. And if you have any specific questions, I'm certainly here to answer them right now. But I just thought I'd share that with you as well.
What's the pixel output of the images?
The pixel output of the images,
Resolution.
I would have to look that up. It's the 533 sensor. It's the same as that. 3,000 by 3,000. Yes.
So I have a Unistellar EV Scope 2, which has the eyepiece, and the sound is virtually identical to the experience I get with the Unistellar. But the advantage to this is that I can plop it into any scope.
Right.
The acquisition time does take several minutes, and that scope also comes with tracking, and that is essential. It'd be nice if the stacking could happen more rapidly, so we could almost do a manual mode, but I guess that's not possible.
So make sure we get it on the video. About Unistellar telescopes have been doing this for many years. They have a similar eyepiece idea, but it's already integrated into a scope. This one can be plopped into any telescope. And to your point about being able to put it into like a Dob or something, there are some folks out there that are using a Dob, and I don't know if they're pushing it or if they have it on a platform or not, but they are getting really good images from Smart Eye with their Dobs. Yes?
Is a phone required, or is it like just enhance the?
The phone. The question is a phone required? The phone is not required. Everything is done within the eyepiece. The phone is add-on if you want, but it's definitely not necessary.
And it's a 12-volt.
The power input is a 12-volt input into a power supply that outputs USB-C, but you must use this. All right, and the DC power input, I believe it's like a 2-amp input, and they're very careful to tell you that you need to use the proper adapters And I did use a Celestron battery pack for a little while, and I ended up stopping to use it because it was causing it to not perform correctly because of the Celestron power bank giving intermittent power levels. And so they said they would recommend just use it plug in, but you.
$1,000 device and a $4,000 power supply.
This power supply comes with the device, and there's a wall plug that costs $20. That is an extra, but I did not. It's supposed to work with a battery, but you got to be careful that you don't plug it into the wrong thing. And not all USB-C are the same, so just because you have a USB-C cable, don't plug it into it. Updates, by the way, are happening rapidly. Firmware updates, I've gotten like 3 or 4 firmware updates in the last 2 months. And they're constantly iterating this design. They are coming out with some accessories, as I was saying, with the filter wheel. They're also talking about coming out with a diagonal. So if you're interested in having, with certain reducers, to have a reducer in front of it before you're converting it to the diagonal, it'll be able to accept that and have the proper back spacing, back focus. But that's going to be dependent upon your scope. But there's a lot of momentum, and they're definitely not just stopping here. Any other questions? Yes.
Will Pegasus have any competition forthcoming?
Will Pegasus have any competition forthcoming? I would imagine so, because it's pretty hot. Now, whether they can get a sensor or not is a different question. So, I mean, they do have a patent on this particular design, but I'm not a patent lawyer, so I can't tell you what that looks like. Other questions? So I'm a little bit early on time here, right? Another 12 minutes or so. If questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But if there are no questions, I guess we'll wrap up. Oh, okay. Is this made in the United States? So Pegasus is in Greece. Of course, the sensors are all produced overseas, and I don't know if it's China or if it's Taiwan or where exactly the sensors are coming from. That's not something I'm aware of. But they're getting them from Sony, right? The sensors. So I believe that the actual, putting it all together is being done in Greece, and then Sky Safari is based out of the United States and Canada. Other questions? All right. Thank you.